Welcome back to Inside City Hall. Residents of several blocks in central Brooklyn bore witness yesterday to a frightening scene. Dozens of people apparently overdosing, dealing with the effects of a bad batch of synthetic marijuana, commonly known as K2. Joining us to talk more about this and other substance abuse problems that are plaguing communities here and around the country, we've got Dr. Carl Hart. He is chair of the Department of Psychology at Columbia University. He's also done extensive research on drug addiction and is the author of High Price, a neuroscientist's journey of self-discovery that challenges everything you know about drugs and society. Dr. Hart, always welcome. Very good to see you.
Good to see you, bro.
Are the effects that we saw, when you saw it, I see that it's happening, and they're saying it's happening next to a methadone clinic. So I'm thinking there might be multiple substances involved here, right?
Earl, you should have been out on the street reporting about that, because you're absolutely right. There are some simple things that, first of all, people got sick. That was very clear. And so the thing that we want to know next is, well, why did they get sick? And it's not, we can't simply say that they got sick from whatever was in the packet, but it'd be nice to know what was in the packets. And we could simply do chemical analysis on the packets. And we can also do chemical analysis in terms of what they had in their system, because if it was a combination of methadone or some other drug, it would be more helpful than simply frightening people to say this bad K2, this bad batch of K2. I don't know. We know with K2, people are seeking to get cannabinoids. That's the major sort of compound in marijuana. So they're seeking a marijuana-like high because marijuana is illegal in New York, not in Colorado, not in Washington, not in Oregon, but in New York. And so we have this particular issue. If they're seeking to get a cannabinoid-like high, it'd be nice to know if cannabinoids were actually in that packet. It'd be nice to know what people actually got sick from.
And we don't know, in part because there's no labeling, right? They're not obeying basic sort of consumer standards about, like, here's what's in this package, right?
Absolutely. They're not obeying those, because that's not what they do. But we as responsible public health officials, we can simply test what's in the packets. We can simply get blood levels from those people who got sick.
Does that not happen automatically?
No, it doesn't happen automatically. I mean, when you ask, does it not happen automatically, we, the taxpayers, should be, that information should be available to us. And if it's not available, it's not happening. And we should actually request that.
Okay, so now as a media guy, I know a great image when I see one. And people staggering around, falling down all over the place, dozens of people. That's a great image. That's an important story. We're going to take it. We're going to run with it. It sounds like you're saying we should also be asking of the authorities, what was in the package? When are you going to test? Not if, but when are you going to test it? What and when are you going to test the blood of the people who were victimized, and so forth and so on?
Absolutely. That would be more responsible journalism. That would be the service that the public needs. You ask these additional questions. As you said, they're nice images, but those images do nothing to keep people safe.
What I've learned over the years is that when something like that happens, there's a certain population of drug users who will actually flock to and try to get that very thing that nearly killed a bunch of people, right?
Yeah, that certainly happens, because sometimes people say, oh, it was more potent, so therefore I want that drug, I want that effect. But that's a small number of people, and I think that that's been kind of overstated. I hope that what we do as public health officials, I hope that we do those simple basic things. Just simply test what was in the packet, what's in the blood levels of these folks.
And armed with that information, what helpful result would happen from knowing and publicizing that information?
Yeah, one of the things that would happen, for example, let's just say that it wasn't the compound that people were looking for. It sends the message quite clearly to people who are buying these things that cannabinoids are not necessarily going to be in the packet. That's a clear message, and you should avoid this packet. That would be so much more helpful, and there would be more people that would increase the trust.
It's not going to get you high.
It's not going to get you high, it's going to get you sick, and it would increase the trust of the people for public health officials. That would be an immediate effect.
Interesting. Now, I've been meaning to talk to you about this heroin epidemic I keep hearing about. Epidemic, I know, is actually a technical term. You can tell me whether or not it is or isn't. But there's this question about whether or not opioids, prescription drugs in particular, are sort of a gateway and leading to use of street drugs. And secondly, did we inadvertently, perhaps, by closing off avenues toward, doctor shopping or other kind of prescription abuse, maybe opened the door to people going and trying to find opioids on the street.
I know that's sort of a popular sort of view that prescription opioids are this gateway to heroin abuse. And that certainly has happened with some people, but not the majority of heroin users. Now, the thing that we have to be clear about is that heroin use in the United States has always been relatively low. When we think about the number of current heroin users, it's less than 500,000. And that number... Nationwide. And that number has always been relatively low. And then you think about the number of current marijuana smokers, 22 million. Current number of cocaine users, 2 million. You think about these other drugs, heroin has always been far lower. So it's a select group of people who will use heroin, number one. And by us, again, getting hysterical about these issues, we avoid or we miss the opportunity to educate people about how to stay safe. So heroin and other opioids, it's a real concern that people may run the risk of overdosing and dying. That's a real concern. Now, many of the people who die from a heroin or opioid overdose have another drug on board, another sedative on board, something like a benzodiazepine, something like alcohol, even antihistamines. All of those things increase the sort of potential of heroin causing respiratory suppression. So if that's the case, we miss the opportunity to tell people, if you're going to use an opioid, please don't combine it with another sedative because it increases the likelihood of toxicity.
Do we need a law, perhaps a state law, ordering public health authorities to find and publicize that very information?
Yeah, that would be good. You know, that would be, you know, I'm one of these people who I get afraid when we start to having more laws, because when we start having more laws, the people who pay primarily are poor people. Mm-hmm. But in this case, if it's aimed towards public health officials, I think that would be a good idea. I mean, it seems like a basic thing to do if you really care about public health. Mm-hmm.
Well, they don't need a law. I mean, they could find and publicize this information if they felt like it, right?
I think so, because they certainly confiscate these compounds. Why not simply test them and publicize it and publish it in the local communities?
Okay, I think I see a path forward, and we in the media could maybe help get us on that path. But thank you so much for coming by. Very serious topic. As always, you have been fascinating and educating.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we're going to take a short break. Coming up, we're going to talk about Donald Trump's search for a running mate when I'm joined by Curtis Lewa and Herson Barrero in the weekly political rundown. Stay with us.